Okay, so I turned the lights on and I put a jacket on because, well, I turned the lights on to switch things up a bit, and I put the jacket on because it's cold. It's so cold here. These are all my books that I read because I'm smart, and that's my fridge. And these are my headphones. They make me look like a huge dork. There, now I look much cooler. Actually, I don't need to wear these right now because I haven't started watching the movie yet. Okay, but I'm gonna start watching right now. So now I'm gonna watch part 2, right, of the Second Renaissance, and give you guys my commentary. Enjoy the show. Second Renaissance Part 2. So once again, we see the trippy, zoom into the archive that we saw in Renaissance Part 1. And I don't want to mention the dialogue, but so there's always like, oh, let there be light, and man was blessed by light. But there's like, it's also referring to all the energies of the universe. Right. So back to the biblical references, which are interesting. Okay, after that we see these. After the biblical references, we see these ships. That they don't look like any kind of human ships, and if you actually look at what's propelling the ships, it's the same like kind of engines that the machines designed. So in the Second Renaissance Part 1, the machines create like these hovercrafts or whatever, and now we see that the humans are using these same hovercrafts to wage war on 01, right? So we see that the humans are piloting these ships that are clearly of machine design to bomb 01, which is the machine city, right? And then it zooms out to the Earth, and the whole Earth turns into like this fiery ball. Right, because humans are nuking the planet, and they're destroying it, but it didn't really do anything. The next scene shows the robots marching on the human cities, and we see like this. First we see some robots marching, and these robots still look human for some reason. They still look like bipedal or whatever. And then we see like this Italian style kind of like, well, yeah, like a Renaissance style city. Maybe like if you went to go visit like Italy or France or something, there's like the kind of town that you would see with like a rich history or whatever, cathedrals and stuff. And it's getting destroyed. It's getting like demolished, and in the background we can see like this huge alien city. I don't know if it's a city or if it's like a giant ship or something. It looks like a huge alien city. These buildings don't even look anything like buildings anymore. They look like cocoons or something, like huge spherical cocoons. I don't know. But the shape of these buildings kind of contrasts a lot with the square, our square buildings and our huge rectangle shaped skyscrapers. These are all like round, and they look like actually like fungi or something. I don't know, but there's definitely a contrast between the buildings that are built by machines and the buildings that are built by humans. And in this particular scene, as the human buildings are getting destroyed, we see like these new fancy machine buildings, that look way more menacing and advanced. Okay. Yeah. So the more we see the human buildings built by robots, they're very, very spherical and dome-like and shiny. So then we see that the humans are introducing the idea of Project Dark, the mission operation, whatever, Mission Darkstorm, which is to, you know, obliterate the sky. What they do is they send out these nanomachines, like put them in the sky, and then the sun can't get into the earth or whatever. So it's gonna cause like another ice age or something. The main thing is that the machines can't function without the sun's energy, and the humans. I mean, they're desperate, so this is their last resort. And we see the leaders of humanity clapping, and it's something that's very like this scene as they're all clapping and cheering. We see like a skeleton clapping, and the symbolism is obvious there, right? A man is applauding his own destruction, his unimpeded destruction. Okay, next we see two human soldiers, next to this tree, and the sun's rising. The sun's like shining through the clouds, and I'm not sure. It looks like one of the soldiers is praying, but I'm not sure. They do pray later on, which I will mention, but in this particular scene, it's not too clear what the soldiers are doing. Alright, and then we get to the next scene, which is like these foxholes, right? So humans are back. I mean, foxholes always like remind me of World War I, and how miserable that must have been. So that must have been like the most miserable war to fight ever. So we're back in the foxholes, and we're back at war, and it's not the machines that started this, but it's the humans, and we put ourselves in this miserable situation again. And we have some soldiers yelling in like typical soldier jargon, all right, you maggots, at 1600 area to move out or whatever. And then we see these humans getting into their armored machines. So now the humans are using like these kind of, I don't know, robot shells. So it's not a computer that's controlling these robots. It's a human inside the machine that's controlling these robots, right? Somehow that's more acceptable than a computer controlling robots, right? It's not about skin, flesh, and bones. It's about the human inside the machine, and so basically now we see that so basically this is interesting because the humans are turning, they're not turning themselves into robots, but to compete with the robots, they have to they have to protect themselves, so they kind of have to enter these robotic armored suits to fight the war against robots. And we're fighting this war against robots, and we are machines, and machines are bad, machines are evil, but we're using their technology to fight them. We're becoming robots to fight them. We're not becoming robots, but we're getting inside robot suits to fight them. So it's kind of ironic that we kind of hate them, but we're still depending on everything they created. And it also kind of brings up the question of like, well, like where do you draw the line of what makes us human and what makes us machine? Not what makes us human with that. Okay, it's getting late. I guess I'm getting sleepy or something. But what is the distinguishing factor between a human and a machine, right? It's not flesh and bone. Like here we have these soldiers that are metal on the outside but flesh on the inside. What controls the metal on the outside is the human brain, right? The computer called the human brain. How is this computer, like a brain, which is is basically a computer, different from a regular silicon based computer, right? How are these robots different from the robots that they're fighting against, right? The only difference is that one has meat on the inside and the other one doesn't, right? One comes with a juicy human filling. Okay, anyway, another thing we see is that that humans are praying. So there's some that are praying to like Buddhist monks, and some that are praying to like a Catholic priest. And they're specifically praying to win the war. There's one like evangelical looking, I guess, pastor that he's being watched by some soldiers inside of a tank. And this is another, right, another way that we could say we're different from the machines. We could, like, you know, say religion and say like, well, we're humans and we were created by God, and that's why we have privilege over machines. But I mean, the weird thing, and this comes up at the end of this part, right? This at the end of the Second Renaissance Part 2, the oracle states, "Oh, may God have mercy on not may God have mercy. May both man and machine be forgiven for their sins," right? So we're not sure what the machines believe in, if they have a religion or not. But yeah, man, this video sucks. Sorry. Okay, I'm gonna keep watching and making the video, and hopefully I come up with some better comments. So the next thing is a jet, you know, a fighter pilot and a jet, and he's releasing some bombs. Once again, so we see the you know, the flying vehicles that are obviously designed by machines. Like, we could tell the design's way different. And it's reminiscent of you know, machine designs we've seen before in the Second Renaissance Part 1. And if you're familiar with the Matrix and like the background information of the Matrix, you know that the nanomachines that the humans are using to black out the sky are actually an invention of well, they were invented in 01. So there's this kind of relation between humans still relying on that technology to win, still trying, and I mean, still relying on machines to cover up, to fight the war, still relying on technology, when, you know, it's still technology in the first place that seems to have bitten them in the ass, and now they're about to be extinct. Now they're about to go extinct, right? So we see them using technology, like, I guess, not first to create the machines, but let's start off with the machines. First, they create the machines that revolt against them. Then they use nuclear weapons and the machines' planes to deliver nuclear weapons, which like destroys the planet. And then finally, we see them use the machines, the nanotechnology that was invented in 01 to cover the earth and, you know, block out the sun. So we see, like, man, every time humans turn to technology, it just kind of bites them in the ass. And this is really like nostalgic, I guess, because I mean, it's not nostalgic, but it reflects that kind of like one of the themes of futurist films is that, you know, well, technology is really, really scary and like unknown, and we don't know what's gonna happen, and eventually, I mean, the big motif or the big theme is that we'll eventually create a technology that'll be so great that it'll destroy us. But here we see man repeatedly relying on technology and only making the situation worse, which is a really negative outlook towards the future, and it's not something that is new by any means. Like, even the print, like from the time of the printing press and novels, and I mean, technology has always been like looked at like with caution and with fear. Like, oh, you know, whenever there's new technology, it's like, oh, this generation is going to hell in a handbasket or whatever. So it's always like we always view technology and progress kind of with a little bit of excitement, but also a little bit of fear. And if we extrapolate that fear, or if we just like magnify it, we blow it up, we make it ridiculous, we get an idea of the future that's the Matrix, right? Which, you know, it's not really completely unfounded, but maybe it's just interesting. I mean, it does reflect that one aspect of humans, that we're always kind of excited and afraid of the future and of progress. And then it also reminds me of the shape of things to come, where at the end of the shape of things to come, there's the one guy who's trying to prevent people from people from being sent into space, and he's like, halt this, like, stop this progress, or halt this progress, we demand it, right? Like, to a certain extent, humans want to end progress. They're just we fear change, right? I guess it boils down to like a fear of change, which is really interesting. It's something that comes up a lot in futurist films, I think. And yeah, and in this case, in the Matrix, there's the fear that the more we create, like artificial intelligence, and the more we advance the technology, we're either going to make ourselves obsolete and get destroyed, or we're gonna have to face the question of like, what really makes us human, like what is different from me and the machine that I created. Like, if it has the capability to think on its own, then like what separates man from machine once machines become self-aware. So I think that's interesting. Yeah. Okay, back to the movie. Yeah, the second Renaissance Part 2, man, it's so full of biblical imagery. We have once the sky is covered in darkness, we have, this like kind of like behold the pale horse type of figure, which is a robot riding a robot horse, blowing a trumpet, and it's very like, apocalypse, like the book of Apocalypse from the. It resembles the book of Apocalypse from the Bible a lot. The music's pretty cool too, which I hadn't mentioned. The music's pretty cool, and it's just insane warfare. We see the humans are going bananas, like in their war against machines. I mean, it's not pretty in any sense. It's not like honorable warfare in any sense of the word. Like, there's nothing glorious or honorable or cool about these soldiers, right? They're really they're in resorting to like this kind of rage and desperation to fight the machines. They're really losing anything that could be considered humane or human. They're pretty much showing just how much like animals they really are. And we see them that they're they're suffering from the effects of battle. Like you can see like some of them are trembling and shaking, and it looks like they're already suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, and some of them are injecting themselves with medicine to help them fight. Like, I mean, we see one guy injecting himself with the medicine, and then the next scene is a bunch of them running like frantically into battle, which I assume like whatever they inject themselves with, it's to help them fight and kind of to get over that fear. But I mean, they're gonna get owned. And actually, with the first few scenes of the second Renaissance Part 2 show these human soldiers who are still kind of capable against the machines they're still able to kill them. But these machines are specifically still look like the bipedal, like the original machines. So like when the humans are fighting the machines that still look human, they're portrayed as like we still can do something, we still can destroy them and stuff. But then halfway through the battle, we start seeing these different machines appear, and these machines look like insects. They don't look like anything human. Like, this is what I've mentioned before, that the machines as like the war rages on, they become less and less like their creators, and more into like these efficient monsters. You know, they look like monsters pretty much. And once the machines begin to look like monsters, which is like the monsters we created them, and they look like us, and then we tried to destroy them, and they became like these monsters. They start like once the machines start to look like monsters, then they just start tearing the human armies apart, literally. I mean, there's no chance, and this is one of the craziest scenes. This is one of the this scene, like this huge, it looks like a giant tick. A giant tick has one of the armored machine human soldiers. So it's like a human inside of a machine that's like armored or whatever, and it has so the machine is holding down. I don't know how to. I guess I should have like a name for them. You know, I guess in the Matrix they're called IAUs or something. IAUs, individual armored units. So we see one of these machines holding down like an IAU, and with like a laser, it cuts open its belly. It cuts it open, and then boom, inside we see the human stuck inside, and the human's like yelling out like, help me, oh god, and the machine wraps its tentacles around it and rips him out. Gross. And we see like the bones and the gut and stuff or whatever. So I mean, it goes back to like this image of humans are fighting as these IAUs, which are you know, their exterior is made of steel, and it's like they're inside robots fighting these other robots, and the only difference is what's inside the robot, right? What's inside one is a silicon-based computer, and inside the other one is a carbon-based life form, but when you're not looking at what's on the inside, when you just look at the outside, it's the same thing. It's metal on metal. If you guys have ever seen Grandma's Boy, then you'll know why I'm giggling. But yeah, it's metal on metal action, and yeah, in this case, the machines are just better with their metal. They know how to use their metal better. So next thing we see an image of a soldier who's inside of one of these AIUs, and he gets destroyed. We see that we see him still inside the machine, like bloodied and dead, the weak human flesh is just no match for the grinding gears of the machines. And then the next image is a burning human body, and as the burning human body is walking along, we see like these machines. It's inside of a gear, and like the gears are turning and turning and turning, but the machine is, the person walking is just burning and walking. Then we see like this pile of human flesh, right? So the machines are flying over like this huge pile of human flesh that looks almost exactly like the not a pile of human flesh, but a pile of human bodies, right? So this pile of human bodies looks exactly like the pile of robot bodies that we saw in the Second Renaissance Part 1, when the humans were trying to wipe out the machines. So now we see like this kind of introversion, right, where the machines have wiped out the humans, and you know, pretty much as a direct consequence of the way we treated them, now they're treating us, you know, as inferior beings. Like they're discarding of us in piles, you know, like if we're the inferior beings. Now they see us as obsolete and useless and a threat to their existence. So that's an interesting turn of events and use of imagery. And then we see beds and beds of hospital, rows and rows of hospital beds, and you know, the humans look pretty miserable, right? And then we're introduced to how the machine started to use humans as an energy source. So we see, you know, these frail human bodies getting penetrated by the machines and having their their body's energy used as an energy source. And we see these humans, as they're being penetrated, they're kind of being watched by all these red machine eyes. I mean, it looks like hell. There's a really weird image of well, there's one guy, right? So he's already hooked up to the Matrix apparently, because he's laughing, even though like the situation isn't funny at all, but whatever, he's laughing, so he's definitely in his own little world already, probably already hooked up to the Matrix. The person next to him has the weirdest face I've ever seen. I hope I can get a picture of it to put on the blog, but it's so weird. So this looks like hell, it looks like straight up hell. Like, we see these naked human bodies all hooked up to a bunch of needles and stuff, and we see these glowing red machine eyes just kind of monitoring them. And we see like the red bulbs where the machines are kept. This looks like something out of Dante's Inferno. There's one scene where it's like a wall of human bodies, and they're all wailing and like whatever, making these noises, and the machines are just like like passing along them, hooking them up to hooking them up, and not in the good sense, right? Hooking them up to like more hardware or something. And it looks like demons like overlooking an inferno, pretty much a hell. And then we see like this distorted image of a human face crying and screaming. We see this a flag burning, right? I mean, the flags. And then we see interesting. Well, first we see the flag burning, which is like flags represent countries and nations, and which is entirely human construct. So we see like the end of nations and the end of the world as we know it. And then we see like the walking body that was also burning and walking body, and it finally collapses, but it's not a human body, it's actually a robot body. It's like one of the old school bipedal robots. It collapses, and I mean, I guess that marks the transition from human based machines to machine based machines, like machines that are created by machines that are no longer bear any resemblance to their human creators. And then we see like these new machines, the insect like ones, walking over like a field of corpses, and the same imagery that we saw in part one, where like these robotic skulls that look like humans, like I mean these. So in the second Renaissance part one, we saw like a pile of robotic remains that they look human, and here we see like the pile of actual human carcasses. And then we see the apple again. So we see the apple one more time, and the apple is being held by a robotic hand that's like clicking on it like that, right? The apple representing like knowledge and progress, right? And then we see the new ambassador, right? The new ambassador of 01, basically, who's telling UN. So this is, now we're in UN again, and the robot ambassador is telling the humans, oh, your body's a vessel, your body's a vessel, a relic of the past or whatever. So he signs this new treaty with a barcode. This treaty is supposed to be like, oh, humans are gonna enter the Matrix and be the energy source for the machines. And now they're signing the treaty, which they don't need to sign the treaty, but the machines just want to humiliate the humans apparently. So they're signing the treaty. And another thing that's interesting is that this robot, the ambassador for 01, looks a lot like the first fly we saw. So in the second Renaissance part one, we saw a fly get squished on the map of of the world. And right in front of the same map, we see the robot ambassador, who's got like a million arms and like a million eyes. Not a million, but a bunch of eyes and a bunch of arms. Looks nothing like a human now. Looks like an insect. And I guess I'll point out that I like making. I mean, it's kind of like a reminder, like Starship Troopers, where we're fighting these insects, which insects are like the most, I guess, the animal, the creature that gets the least sympathy from humans, right? Like even, like, you would feel bad killing a dog, but you would feel bad killing a dog, but you wouldn't feel bad killing, a spider or anything, right? At least most people wouldn't. And we kind of privilege certain life forms over others. Insects are basically the most dehumanized or the least privileged of all life forms on Earth. Like, humans don't think twice about killing insects. Most humans don't. Most humans don't think twice about killing insects. So, the fact that the machines now look like insects show that they've been dehumanized, or whether that be by like humans actually like making this propaganda against the machines. And well, basically, yeah, the way that the machines look is a direct consequence of the way that humans treated them. Humans began to treat them inhumanely, and they became less and less human, and now they look like these giant mosquitoes that are gonna pretty much just whoop our butt in war. So that's also interesting. So we see the robotic ambassador. He looks a lot like a fly, or like a mantis or something. And in one hand he's holding an apple, and in the other hand he's holding some kind of scroll, and he says, "Oh, hand over your flesh and a new world awaits you," right? Which is the Matrix. Kaboom. And then they detonate a nuclear bomb inside of the UN, and we see the UN building. It's like a black shadow against the white explosion, and then the pieces disappear. The next thing we see is the snow falling, so we can imagine there's some kind of nuclear and nanomachine induced winter. So the surface is destroyed, the surface of the planet is destroyed, and there's snow falling. And then we see a child playing in the snow with like this wreckage in the background, and the wreckage is the UN building, but now it's been destroyed. So if the UN building represents anything, well, it represents a tower. I mean, it's a tower, and two, right, it represents like all of the world's, like every nation's power, right? And it's totally destroyed. So I mean, this building getting destroyed is just a symbol of like humanity's just been totally pizzoned, which is a way of saying pwned, which means owned, which means they got their butts kicked, which means they lost the war. So there's a kid playing in the snow, but then we see that the kid playing in the snow, and his parents call him over. He starts running towards his parents, but as he gets close to his parents, he realizes, oh, that the parents are not his parents, they're agents. And we see like these quick edits. So these like flashing images of like the Matrix and technology, and we see the little kid engulfed in fire. And he starts screaming. So he's like engulfed in this fire. He starts screaming. Hold on, let me tell you what the quick edits are. So it's like agents, and then machines, and then an eyeball, and then like more machines, and then a fire. And then we see the kid. He's not actually playing in the snow. He's actually inside one of these pods, where hooked up to a bunch of cables, where the machines are using his body for energy, and he's hooked up to the Matrix, where he's experiencing this kind of virtual world, right? And we just see row and row and row of these pods, and everything's black and gray, and electricity is like cackling and it's foggy. Yeah, so there's millions. I mean, all of humanity, not all of humanity, because we know some people don't live here, but a lot of them, most of humanity is hooked up to the Matrix, and as we zoom out from the scene of the Matrix, it cuts to that weird acid trip from part one. Yeah, so that's the end. It's the end of the Second Renaissance, part two. And basically it just shows the transformation of man, from from at one point being on top of everything, to desperately fighting for his life and like screaming and taking these drugs and getting into these robot machines and trying to fight this war against the machines with the machines' technology. So we see like the desperation, like man turns from like emperor to like soldier to desperate, like just a desperate species about to become extinct. And so finally, we're not, all we are is a battery source for the machines. All we are is flesh that produces energy, and we pretty much become a commodity for them, right? So we see that transformation. We see the transformation of humans from emperors to less than slaves, like a commodity, pretty much an energy source, just like gasoline is to us. That's what we become to the machines. So it's a really, I mean, that's interesting, I think. And then we see the transformation of the machines, from being made in our image, but then being treated inhumanely. And that the more that we push the machines, the more that they have to change to survive, the more that they have to make themselves stronger and better and better and more efficient. So the more that we push the machines, the more that we try to like get rid of them, the stronger they become, until the point, and the less human they appear, until the point where they're just like these invincible monsters that, I mean, just a human soldier has no chance against. So yeah, so we see both groups kind of fall from, I mean, I guess what would be considered ideal humanity. The humans lose their, they lose everything. They lose their figure, their shape. They go through like these different kinds of forms, until finally they're just these little things in a pod. Basically, right? Like as I said before, they become batteries for the machines. And we see the machines go from looking like humans to looking like monsters, and basically getting rid of any doing away with their own humanity, with any aspect, with any connection to humanity, to become like this new species, this new life form, that now there are masters. Now the tables have turned. Like now, like now they make the rules, so they get to define, what's a human being, not what's a human being, but they get to define, what is privileged over what. Humans privileged the human mind over robotic minds. We didn't value them at all, and now the machines, well, now they get to say what matters, and they get to say what is of value. And I mean, obviously to them, well, now they're of value. Now they matter more than humans. Humans are nothing but an energy source for them. So it's interesting. Believe it. All right. So anyway, really cool use of imagery in these short films. It's almost midnight here in Japan, so I'm gonna end this video. So that's my commentary. Like I said, I tried to focus mostly on what's portrayed through the imagery. Oh yeah, I mean, and then that's another transformation. So first we have the transformation of humans, from masters to fuel, and we have the transformation of robots, of machines from being made in man's image to these insect-like monsters, and then we have the transformation of the planet, from human inhabited, uh, still like fairly nice place, sunny. At least we had the sun or whatever. But by the end of the film, um, it looks like hell. I mean, it looks like any like if I showed you a picture of what they show in the movie and I told you, oh, this is a picture of hell, you'd be like, well, yeah, that's what it looks like. I don't know. That was stupid. But the point is, it looks really, really bad and like an unpleasant place to live. So, so we see like all these transformations that are brought about by technology, and I think the biggest thematic point that they're addressing is our fear of technology, our fear of progress, our anxiety against it, and also what I would say is like one of the points of zeitgeist for our time, which is right, we're questioning what makes us human, now in a lot of like philosophical debates and a lot of media we see like, oh, how do we know what we're really human, or why what makes us better than machines, or what separates us from artificial intelligence, or potentially if we do finally make artificial intelligence, and if we do finally make machines that are are equal or are greater, what makes us any different from them? Like what makes us anything other than a meat machine, a machine made out of meat, like. So there's questions of identity and questions of what's real and what's the truth, and a lot of that comes up later on in the Matrix too, and a lot of the later Matrix movies are like this question of like the truth, right? The truth is out there, whatever. Um, so that's really interesting, and I guess I don't know, that's really should be discussed in my comments of some of the other films, because it's not one of the main points here. Anyway, I'm tired, I'm sleepy, and I'm rambling, but more to come. Thanks for watching. Good night.